Ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed with our third panel discussion on the topic Winning in the New Era of B2B Payments and Trade Finance Through Digitization. I'm pleased to invite on dais the panel of speakers Mr. Nitin Chugh, Deputy Managing Director and Head, Digital Banking and Transformation, State Bank of India, Mr. Ashok Chandra, Executive Director, Canara Bank, Mr. Rob Nichols, President and Chief Executive, American Bankers Association, Mr. Rajiv Mishra, Executive Director, Bank of India, and our moderator for this session, Mr. Siddharth Gupta, Partner, McKinsey. I request Mr. Siddharth Gupta to initiate the discussion. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I guess this group has the enviable task of engaging a post-lunch audience. So we'll keep the discussions as engaging as possible. We'll break up the discussion in two parts. First on trade finance, and then also on B2B payments, because both have, while they are a similar theme, they have very different drivers of adoption. So maybe we'll start with trade finance, and if I can start with you, Nitin, on what have you seen, how have things evolved in trade finance in India, and what do you think are unlocks still needed? If you could start us on that theme.
Well, thank you, Siddharth. Can't say thank you for starting with me, but nonetheless. So what we are seeing is really 3 or 4 trends. One, of course, is the massive digitization that's taking place, and that actually requires a lot of ecosystem level play. So we have the intermediaries like us who are, of course, going through that whole journey of digitizing. I do admit that this is probably lagged behind the retail side of the whole digitization. Can't hear? Better? Okay. This is the loudest I can speak. So, of course, it's lagged behind the retail side of P2P payments, but nonetheless, B2B was following a different track. So, on trade finance in specific, I think the whole ecosystem is now starting to come together, probably in the last 3 or 4 years. So, what we are clearly seeing is one, the whole rapid digitization of the intermediaries. On the other hand, on the customer side, we are, of course, that demand has always been there, but even the customers have taken a little more time to come up to that level of complete digitization where they are willing to accept. But I think the largest issue has really been, for lack of a better word, the existing models have also worked reasonably well with reasonable efficiency. So there wasn't a need to go and break that down and disrupt it and build something altogether new. So the whole process of bringing in digital has been a little more incremental in phases. But now I think we've come to a point where all of this has now come together nicely. So for example, in our case, now we are seeing almost upwards of 75 to 80% of both the inland as well as the foreign trade now becoming digitized. It's taken us a lot of effort to bring our branches on board. So that also was one part that we had to look at, because there is a process that works. Customers are happy with it. They're okay with it. But once they start seeing the benefits of getting things done in a lot faster manner and with a lot more control on their end, especially on the reporting side, I think these things have also come together. The ID premiums and ED premiums have also kind of stabilized now to the extent that there is greater acceptance. And to that extent, I think the whole ecosystem now is a lot more mature than what it used to be. I wouldn't say it's as mature as what we see on the P2P side, but probably getting there and getting there a lot faster.
Thanks. I think what we hear from you is that a lot of work has happened, yeah, but it's still work in progress, basically.
It is, and maybe not too much of work is left in progress.
That's good to hear. Always good to hear. Mr. Chandra, your thoughts?
Yeah. Before I start, I thank you very much to IB and IbFed for giving me this opportunity to participate in this good discussion now. Now, coming to the point for the trade finance, let us understand the entire ecosystem under which we are all operating, and the potential which is available in the system. And as far as the India is concerned, I think all of us have seen that retail payment side, how much transformation that has happened, and I think we have traveled a long journey, And I was just seeing some few days back only the data for April as far as the digital payment is concerned. I think 20 lakh crore transactions that has happened through the UPI and 19 billion transactions has happened. So that is the ecosystem the India has built in as far as the digital payment is concerned. Second, the innovation and the activity which is happening, and in the financial space, if I see, the growth is happening as in the digital lending piece now. And the trade finance, again, that becomes a part of the DLP journey. We all know, and when we talk about the trade finance, we are talking about the entire MSME journey, because most of the MSMEs, they are operating and they require the digital framework for the trade finance. And again, if I throw the data, we have around 6.5 crore MSMEs in the country. And out of that, 60% of the MSMEs are still not in the banking channel. And even the banking channel, whatever is there in that also, out of that 6.5, there is only 3.65 crore they are registered with the portal. So that is the potential which is available in the ecosystem now. And I think going forward, I see that lot of opportunities which is there in the trade finance as far as the digital initiatives are concerned. I think some initiatives have already happened. The challenge is that how much educative series we can bring it in the MSME case. Again, the role of financial institutions, the role of MSME associations, the role of government, I think that becomes very, very important. Because if I talk about one important thing which has already happened, and I think a lot of progress have made, that is the trades platform. That is a fully digital platform for the MSME units. And again, if I throw some data on that, see, when I was talking about the MSME number, 3.65 crore which is registered, out of that, there are only 83,000 the MSME units which are registered on the trades platform now. And there are hardly 4,800 corporates who are there on the trade platform. So the platform is built now, and the entire trades cycle, if you see the financial institution who are operating on this trade platform, for the MSME and for the corporates also, I think this is a very, very convenient model for the entire digital initiatives, if I talk about that. So I think that is the opportunity that is available. Second aspect, if I see, if I break the trade finance under the domestic trade finance and the international trade finance, where the cross-border payments and all those things are there. So what I am talking about, the domestic trade finance, which is the potential I am talking about that. So trades is one piece. Second development which is happening in the entire financial ecosystem is the supply chain finance. And I think a lot of banks, including our Canara Bank, have initiated a lot of activities on that. We have onboarded fintech and all the activities like the vendor, dealers, corporates, activities related with the MSMEs, entire thing we have put it in that digital footprint on the supply chain financing now. Again, that becomes very, very important from the point of view of the MSME, if you talk, or the corporates, if you talk, for availing the hassle-free transaction facilities through that channel. So what I see now, I think a lot of efforts are required. We have started building the system for the trade finance, but awareness level, interventions at the different juncture, I think those things are required to evolve this entire trade finance journey as good as the digital payment which is happening in the retail framework now.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chandra. Mr. Mishra, your thoughts?
Thank you, Siddharth. In fact, I will agree to both what Ashok Chandra ji said and Nitin Chugh ji said. But let me take a step backward and say that how do we do finance? The underwriting, basic aspect of underwriting here in any part we do collateralized based underwriting, the norms, the way we underwrite any proposals that is there. So the mindset also for the underwriting, the way these underwritings have to be looked into has to change. So that is one step which the banks or the financial institutions are taking care of. Secondly, at the same time, the customer also has to change accordingly. So both the changes, if they start happening, then only this ecosystem is going to evolve. Then there are multiple intermediaries in the player who have to plug into this ecosystem. And when all these things come together, which has happened very fast in as far as the retail financing is concerned. So because there are limited data points, data sets which have to be looked into, and the underwriting is a bit easier there than in these cases. So Chandra sir very rightly mentioned that we made a journey by Threads platform which came, but then the onboarding of customers is very limited there. That also we have to improve. All the banks, including Bank of India, we are all trying to develop trade finance models, collaborating with fintechs, and then trying to onboard the customer. Now it is a two-way process where we have to do educate our team, design our policies, basis the new models which are coming for underwriting. At the same time, onboard the customer, because today he was in a habit of coming down to a branch, giving his request, and then basis that request, either a term loan or a working capital was sanctioned, and limits used to be sanctioned, he was using it. Now here it's a invoice financing or channel financing or supply chain management. So all those products are different, where he also has to understand. And sometimes he has to work independently, not coming to the bank. We provide him a portal where he just accesses the portal and does that. So it's a long journey to go, but a good beginning has already been made. And I think as in the retail payment, India has shown way to the world in UPI sector. Here also we would be making a lot of inroads and showing the world how it can be done much further, both domestic as well as forex part of it is concerned.
Understand. Thank you, Mr. Mishra. So I think 2 or 3 key messages I take away from this round of conversations. Number one, a lot of progress has been made. We are at a place where we are probably decent from the bank digitization perspective. Of course, there are other ecosystems which now need to come together as well. At the same time, if we draw parallels, and probably unfair parallels, to our retail payments journeys, B2B payments and trade finance probably has a way to go. And also, if you just look at the untapped potentials from 65 million odd MSMEs, probably not even 5 to 6% are onboarded onto some of these trade platforms. So there is both a finance, onboarding, and a bunch of other unlocks required. So if we segue to the second part, which is one is trade finance, and now if we kind of also talk about B2B payments as a theme. Maybe Rob, you could get us going on this one, given you've seen the movie play out in the United States, and share your perspectives.
Sure, thank you. And first, thanks to the Indian Banks Association for partnering with IbFed and for hosting this fantastic panel and set of meetings. So the US we're on our own payments journey, and we're in some cases lagging other jurisdictions. So I wanted to share kind of 2 unique things that are happening in the United States marketplace around B2B payments. So the first is, we have 2 different set of evolving payments rails. This is quite different than everywhere else in the world. We have one called real-time payments that the banks themselves are building. And then we have a second one called FedNow that the Federal Reserve is building. And so they're both evolving at the same time. The rest of the world is doing this quite differently. So we have both a public and a private sector set of B2B payment rails evolving simultaneously. It's odd, I'll own that, okay? And one thing that's really important that we're really, really laser focused on in the US is to make sure these 2 sets of payment rails are interoperable and work with one another. So that is our kind of foundational key focus. So that's oddity number 1, or kind of a unique characteristic of the B2B system in the US, that there are 2 evolving sets of rails. The second thing is, at the same time, in a lot of different jurisdictions within the United States, a lot of our SMEs are still doing paper payments, checks. In the United States, there's still a lot of paper in our system. So we're trying to migrate that away from paper into a more digital footing, and working with all these SMEs to migrate them into the digital future, and to help them with their accounting systems and the technology regimes that they need to do that. So we have 2 payment rails, which is unusual. And then we also we lag other jurisdictions in that we still have a paper-heavy component to payments that we're trying to change into the digital future.
That's quite interesting. I mean, if we were to draw parallels here, at least the digitization part, the usage of checks, etc., have dramatically come down. They've not gone down to 0.
Right.
But yeah, it is. And from an interoperability perspective, most of the bank systems are at this point in time. But as you said, 2 parallel evolutions, so a unique challenge on its own. I mean, Nitin, you have certain thoughts, given you're one of the biggest payment processors in the country.
B2B or generally?
On B2B.
On B2B. So B2B payments, I think it's not like we haven't ever been there. So B2B digital payments, electronic payments, call them whatever, they've been around for a long enough time.
Exactly.
There have been solutions in the past. There have been solutions around how people can make bulk payments. So we are of course seeing a decline in the paper-based instruments for sure. And now that UPI is also made available for corporate payments,
Yes.
I think we are seeing a gradual takeoff even for UPI. But I think it's again like with every other thing that it's not your firstborn. It will take some time. It will take some time, and the attention obviously comes there over a period of time. But then now that there is a reasonable attention from the entire ecosystem, and corporates themselves or smaller businesses themselves are appreciating the fact that this is the right way to do this. Because remember that the overall cost of compliance is certainly going up for all of us.
Yeah.
The incidence of frauds are going up like never before. And therefore, people who don't understand digital payments are going to be reluctant to get into something that they don't understand. And the operating models in businesses across various types of trades in the smaller towns and cities are very deeply embedded. It's very difficult to uproot them and say that from now on, this is what we will do. For example, if 20 businesses, small businesses in the market send one person to the bank with all the checks, that is not going to change anytime soon. And we used to believe that this is a generation-related issue that, once the new generation takes over those businesses, they'll automatically move to digital payments. But that doesn't happen because there is employment for people also. So how do you take that away? And some of the smaller businesses have a micro ecosystem of their own. So it's very hard to go and just say that, okay, from, I'm moving everything to digital and you don't need these 20 people from tomorrow.
Correct.
Because that's how those businesses have been built. But nonetheless, because there is a pushback from intermediaries, there is a greater demand for better compliance, and the incidence of frauds have also started to show up in the smaller businesses. People are a lot more careful with what they adopt, how soon they do that, and whether they do that, in a measured manner. But I think it's starting with the larger corporates, going all the way to the smallest of businesses. I think we are somewhere in the middle. We obviously have everybody using digital payments, but the extent of density of digital payments at the higher level with the larger businesses is obviously much higher. And as you go down, there is higher prevalence of cash and paper-based instruments. But nonetheless, that's also undergoing a change. And maybe some of it will always remain. And I don't see anything wrong with that.
Absolutely. All right. Mr. Mishra, if we can come to you, and what are you seeing in your bank particularly in terms of how are these trends playing out on the B2B side?
See, the thing is, banks and the other side of the ecosystem, both are working hand in hand together with collaboration of fintechs and all that, trying to see that. You should understand that it also demands a lot of investments also, both on the IT infrastructure side and the system sides and the people side also. While at one point of time we said digitization and this will remove, include the people will be less utilized, but then at the same time compliances would be more, as Nitin rightly mentioned that compliance is one point of view. But at the same time, as we go down and to the smaller units and all that, they are finding it difficult to do a lot of investments here. So how do we take care of that? So there has to be a collaboration with the fintechs, with the banking sector and the other people put together to see that we built into a system like top corporates. We can do a host-to-host connectivity. We provide systems, their ERPs. Then there are multiple different sets of systems the corporates are using. They are not one single systems which the corporates are using, which is easier to just bring in attached to that. So there are a lot of difficulties and challenges, but then things have started moving towards it. People have understood the benefits of the process of digitization and seeing that the turnaround time of money is faster, the usage of money, utilization of money is becoming much more faster, because in the check payment days, if you remember, you get a credit after T+2, T+3 or T+7 days also. Here you can get an instant credit, you can use the same capital, revolve it around. While those benefits are there, optimal utilization, you have to do a lot of investment on the other side. Gradually it is happening. It has come midway down. I think a lot of more grounds have to be covered, especially with the smaller MSME sectors and all that, where if we try to onboard them and give them some help, hand-holding with the government infrastructures and other also coming into picture, the ONDCs and other sectors which are coming where they're trying to put the platforms there, we definitely will see a big movement and big shift to the digital adoption in B2B payments in the days to come.
Understand. And I think both you and Nitin made the point around MSMEs being a big part of this whole adoption curve and equation. And Mr. Chandra, you as a bank, Canara Bank, and you personally have kind of led a lot of these adoption and initiatives for MSMEs. So it would be good if you could kind of also throw some light
I
on
think
this?
Mr. Chugh and Mr. Mishra, they mentioned about the activities which are happening in the B2B payments. See, one thing we should understand that digital is the only way going to be for this activity now. Now, it depends on how much initiative at the financial institution side we take, how much initiative from the MSME and ecosystem entire, how it comes out. Uh, as far as the Canara Bank is concerned, in fact, we have come out with the corporate mobile app also, along with the retail mobile app, which was already there in our system. And we have built everything on that corporate mobile app, which will facilitate the corporates and the MSME units to do the transaction sitting in the house, tracking the entire movement of their activities or the originating transaction which they have done. This entire movement also can be tracked, and very, very seamless payments can happen now. Now, challenge in B2B payment is that there are different stakeholders are there in this. It is not like retail one-to-one transactions it is there now. You have the vendors, you have the suppliers, you have the producers, then there are banks, different banks are concerned. So, entire ecosystem has to be built in such a way that there is a uniform, some sort of digital framework like ONDC, if I talk about that. Then on that ONDC platform, you have the supplier, vendors, logistics, everybody is there now. Now the financial institutions are also there to tap this entire opportunity, and seamless activity can happen there. So I think some activity has to happen to build a system like this, wherein the very, very seamless transactions can happen. Second initiative which the bank has taken along with this corporate mobile app is the FX for you, like a forex transaction when we talk about the cross-border payments. Now again, it is very, very limited to the transaction which is getting originated from the customer side. It is a totally digital now. Sitting in the house, sitting in the office, he can initiate the LC processing, and he can track that what is the status of my LC, when the payment is going to come. But once it goes across the country, then it becomes very, very difficult to track that transaction. So federation like this, the organization like this, what I will suggest that whether we can build a system like SWIFT, wherein the transactions, all the cross-border remittances, cross-border transactions which are happening, it should get captured in the digital framework now. Suppose as a corporate, I have originated some transaction through some bank. My entire activity on that related with the transaction should get captured now. Not only with issuing of the LC. Once the LC is getting issued, or the export payments are happening now, along with that goods which is getting dispatched, whether my bills of lading also should come directly to this digital platform. Whether that custom department and customs of the organizations which is there on this platform, they have related through the API, and this entire activity or entire journey is also getting captured through this digital mode now. Whether the ECGC payment, ECGC guarantee, or related with any insurance which you are taking it, can we integrate that also through the API and bring it to this digital mode now? And once the payment is due, that also should get tracked through the system, and it should come seamlessly through the system now. So entire ecosystem, if you are able to build it like a SWIFT model, I think across the globe, we will have a very, very seamless transactions through this entire digital piece now. And it is the need of hour, because you see how much frauds that is happening in the trade finance now. So to prevent the frauds, to prevent to bring the transparency in the entire system, seamless activity, paper movement. You see today, if you do any one forex transaction, how much paper movements are there and how much paper submission is there from the client now. Yeah. And I have seen that with the introduction of the LC payment through the digital mode, entire that activity just stopped now. Now, say for example, one bill of lading. Now 3-4 the entire document has to be submitted to the bank now. If you go for the e-bill of lading, entire this process you can streamline and you can minimize the paper loss also. So I think from the easy point of view also, and from the transparency and the seamless activity point of view, I think we must think of creating some sort of ecosystem where some countries come together and build a robust system.
Understand. So absolutely, Mr. Chandra, and fair point. It needs a much bigger orchestration from a stakeholder perspective. But Nitin, if I come to you and as big as an entity that you kind of work for, there are multiple priorities within the bank from a digitization perspective. And as Mr. Chandra said, a lot needs to be also orchestrated to kind of get this done. So what do you think, like internally, how do you see it in the whole scheme of things? Do you think at least internally this is there much more sort of internal focus needed to kind of get these things done? They always kind of go behind the more classic retail or other higher value use cases.
See, I'm not talking about
The bank.
my bank right now. I'll probably talk about it in a bit. But generally speaking, in the industry, people would usually chase the revenue pool.
Exactly.
Okay, so wherever the revenue pools are is where you get things done first, and that's common sense. So I don't think there is any scientific logic behind it. However, the counter to that is exactly the retail payments.
Exactly.
Why do we all of us chase UPI when there is no revenue pool? Okay, so you're doing this for a greater purpose, much beyond the revenue pool. For the same reason, it doesn't get done in any other country also, because there the revenue pool is more important. Okay? But from a prioritization point of view, I think what really happens is that either the dog can wag the tail, and sometimes the tail can wag the dog. Okay, so in case of B2B payments or trade finance, really what's happened is that even if they were overlooked for some time by banks, and maybe not so much by banks, by even the tech companies, because finally banks are consumers of technology. We don't make our own technology. We can go to a tech company and say that, listen, this is a problem our customers have. Can we do something about it? But the tech company needs to have a solution. Okay, so the tech companies have also taken their own time to come up with this kind of, these kind of solutions. But since all of that is done now, at least in SBI, we have no. I think all our efforts and initiatives are equally prioritized. So, for example, while we are working on rebuilding the retail side of our customer-facing channels completely, we are equally focused on rebuilding our entire trade finance instance. So, there's a complete revamp of the trade finance instance that's going on. And to the extent that we were not able to digitize, we are going to be doing that. To the extent that we were not able to improve the UI, we are doing that. To the extent that we were not able to partner with some of the intermediaries or the ecosystem players, we are bringing the architectural change to enable that. Right. Now, when we are testing this back with customers, because we are rolling out in phases, we are seeing the needle move from something as low as 10% adoption rate within 6 months going to 70% adoption rates. Okay? So there is a barrier to be broken, both in terms of our ability to go and take it to customers through the same people who otherwise have done this business traditionally, but also signaling that this is equally important.
Right.
Okay, and that, at least in our case, it occupies equal amount of mind share of the top management whenever we are looking at any B2B side of initiatives versus any B2C side of businesses. And by the way, since we also work a lot with the government, and all the people on the dais today, on the stage today, work with the government a lot. The government has become a very big, has caused a lot of alteration in the way the business was done earlier, at least on the transaction banking side. So the government doesn't keep any more float. They fund their accounts just in time. So that pool has started to dry up. Right. So when that pool dries up, you go to another pool. So when you go to another pool, whether you like it or you don't like it, you have to do things that the other pool wants.
Yeah. Very fair. I think that's a very practical view of how this thing works. Maybe we look, fintech is something which has been obviously in the payments landscape in general hotly debated, and in fact most of the most valued fintechs are in the payment space. But if we just take, say, trade finance and B2B payments just as a clunk, what's been the posture of banks versus fintechs? And maybe Rob, I could start with you.
Sure. So 2 observations to share there. First, just the general kind of posture of fintechs and the banks, and then secondly, how integral in the United States that partnership is. So when I started at the ABA 8 years ago, there were about the same amount of fintech companies as banks in the United States, about 5,000 of each. And at the time, this is just 8 years ago, the rhetoric from the fintech sector towards the banking sector was very muscular, very combative. We're going to drive you out of business. We're going to disrupt your business model. You're going extinct. That was the rhetoric of the fintech companies towards the banking sector in the States as recently as 8 years ago. That has completely flipped upside down to now those same roughly 5,000 companies call us on a daily basis to say, how can we partner with US banks? How can we work together? what are areas of collaboration, what are areas of alignment. So it's completely done a 180 in just as recently as 8 years. So that's observation number one. Observation number two, again, we have a unique evolution in the United States in that of the 4,568 banks, the largest 50 have kept their customer ledger internal. The other 4,500 have subordinated their back office to one of three companies, Fiserv, FIS, and Jack Henry. So that fintech partnership between banks and technology companies is alive and well in 4,500 of the banks in the United States, where there is a marriage that exists. And then those three companies have fintech partnerships or partnerships with a host of other fintech companies. So if you're a bank in the United States, your core services provider, which is one of those three companies, then has a relationship with dozens, hundreds of other companies. So you can create a bespoke set of technology relationships just based on your customer base, the part of the region, the bank model that you are in the United States. So it is integral in the United States. And sometimes it works very well. Obviously, sometimes there's friction, just like in any other part of the world. But it's evolved in a very interesting way. But the key takeaway is the rhetoric has completely shifted in as little as 8 years.
That's very interesting. Mr. Mishra, what are you observing in this space particularly, and how fintechs have?
I'll more than agree with what Rob said. And fintechs have started now understanding that it's a collaboration which is required with the banks because of the multiple aspects. One, the capacity with which the banks, especially if you look at the Indian context, the public sector banks or even the private sector banks, the handling of the customer base which they are having and the product and area of reach they are having. The fintechs cannot have that capacity to reach to that aspect. So they can be designing niche products, they can come out with some new variants, but then to have that scale of capacity to build up, they need a partnership. And that's where the banks can come into picture. And we have been seeing across that we build tie up with multiple fintechs. They have good technology and they are able to plug into that ecosystem of the banks, and then together we can provide good products and services to the customer. There are certain areas which are handled properly by the fintechs also, like Rob, I was mentioning FIS in their payment system. Here also we have similar players who do credit card, payment gateways and other things where banks leverage to them, and they are partnering with multiple banks, not one, together. So that ecosystem is there in place, and this ecosystem is growing. Down the line, as well as you had an earlier question where I said, how is it happening in the bank, whether digitization is driving it or who is driving it? See, it's the business which has to drive. Ultimately, we all are in business, and business is driving. We know where the business is coming. Nitin rightly mentioned the government is moved from a just-in-time money. Now, where do we get our resources? Now, that is where we look at a different pool of sets. And when we look at a different pool, the customer has a different demand. And those demands have to be met either primarily because of technology, which has a faster go-to-market strategy. So that is how the things are moving in, and the ecosystem is catching up. We are collaborating with most of the banks. I think here we are sitting, we can say around 50 to 100 fintechs tie-ups we are having with it, whether it's a co-lending pool, pools, other things, or payment systems. Everywhere we have multiple, not one fintech tie-up, but multiple fintech tie-ups. So there are ecosystems where there are a number of fintechs available in one ecosystem space. They have their niche areas, and we tie up with them and try to build the entire ecosystem together. So it's a collaboration which is much more in prominence nowadays, and both of the players have to coexist together.
Understand. Mr. Chandra, from a B2B payments perspective or a trade finance, how have you experimented?
In fact, what Mr. Rob and Mr. Mishra mentioned about the fintech tie-ups. In fact, gone are the days when we used to see that fintechs are going to compete with the financial institutions and the banks. Today, we are all working as a collaborative unit, and until and unless, banks and financial institutions, their primary focus is the banking activity, whether the deposits or the lending. So, if we want to bring the technology in the banking channel, I think definitely we need to go to the fintech. And today we have hundreds of fintech. They have the expertise in the different aspect, And finally, if we want to improve the customer service, the delivery at the fastest possible time, I think definitely the fintech has to be onboarded, and all the banks, yes, we have onboarded hundreds of fintechs, and for each and every activity, there are fintechs, and they are facilitating the entire transaction. Now, in our bank also, if I talk about Canara Bank, I think we have initiated the initiative for the seamless credit facility for the MSME units, wherein we have onboarded few fintechs. See, there is one fintech who takes care of all my KYC and due diligence aspect. There is one fintech who takes care of the income tax and the GST part, account statement reading, account aggregator. Every activity means we have onboarded the fintech. And finally, there are products which is so seamless that within 5 to 10 minutes, if somebody has the GST payments and he has made some GST payment in the previous month and he wants to avail the credit facility, he can go to our site and apply for the GST credit facility. And within 5 to 10 minutes, sitting in the house, he can get that delivery now. So that is the strength of the payment system and the fintech integration with the banking channels. They are doing it now. Similarly, we have some other products which I mentioned about the trades and other things. They are also in, I think, each and every activity we need to bring that fintech company on board now, because we can't invest each and every activity for the technology payments. So there are fintechs who have the ready-made solutions for that. So I think it becomes very, very convenient, cost-effective also for the banks to onboard them.
Understand. Nitin, any areas of unlock left via fintechs?
Yeah, quite a few, I would say, because I think we kind of missed the bus with the retail payments. It's not like there was a chance to collaborate, but we also didn't realize that we were competing with another set of people who took the market away from us. So late realization, but nonetheless, I don't think we're letting that happen in the B2B space. For sure, there is greater awareness. But the way it's going about in our case is that, let's say you want to offer a B2B solution, trade finance or whatever else, or corporate internet banking to a smaller business. That smaller business will require a whole lot of ecosystem level capabilities to be able to bring the whole business digital, because digital payments can only happen when the business is somewhat digital, or at least there is some flavor of digital in the way that they run the business. If their downstream payments or upstream payments are not going to be digital, it's very difficult for a business sitting in the middle to say that I'm fully digital. They cannot be. So this whole ecosystem enabling that has to happen. That is where we are taking the help of some of the, I won't call them fintechs only, but some of these new tech companies which can come and enable, for example, payroll, can come and enable, let's say, better inventory management, can enable, let's say, salary payments for them, payroll management, etc. That is what not just us, but I think most of the banks are trying to bring that together, so that when we go and talk to these small businesses to move on to digital payments, it is not the only thing that we are asking them to do. We also help them in actually moving the whole business to another level of being digitally capable and therefore more competitive.
Understand. Got it. So I think the posture here is much more collaborative, at least on the payment side, and there's a lot to do. Especially, and then the curve is not what happened in the retail payment side. It's much more, I would say, lockstep in that sense in B2B. Great. I think just one final round of questions, which is the next big thing, and it's been evolving since the last 12 months. Difficult to say what's been the real success in terms of various use cases, but just in terms of trade finance, B2B, generative AI and machine learning, how do we see that evolve and play a role? Maybe Rob, again, we could get you going in terms of.
So our members are looking at Gen AI really to improve bank function in one of three ways: fraud prevention, as the previous panel talked about, customer service, and risk management. So it remains to be seen exactly how that's going to play out, but those are the three areas of bank function that we're hoping Gen AI can improve.
Perfect. Mr. Mishra?
Yeah, apart from what Rob mentioned, these three aspects are there, and we can use machine learnings and other tools which are available to fine-tune our underwriting skills. We can give better products, give much finer array of products to the customers, and meet the demand just in time, what it is needed in the ecosystem. So these all can bring together a lot of investments and things are, because banks are sitting on a huge pile of data. And now all the banks are building up data capacities where they are trying to capture all sort of data, which is, in fact, traffic, I'll say, both structured, unstructured, coming towards them. Like Bank of India, we are building a big data lake where we capture all these inputs, and this would be done with the tools which are available, both generative AI and machine learning, which will be able to give better products to the customer, give customer service enhancements, give do fraud prevention, and all bring all those features which are there. In fact, if you read the Economic Times today, you find almost 37% increase in the job for these two profiles have increased in this year. So that's where the entire ecosystem is looking at. These are the things to be look forward to, and all the banks, especially like Bank of India, like us, we have already onboarded the journey and we are moving forward in this direction.
Mr. Chandra,
Yeah.
any use cases you see experimenting with, especially in
Yes.
this-
In fact,
this
in today's environment, if you don't do the customization for the customers, if you develop a general product and want to sell this product to everybody, I think you will be lost in the entire journey now. And if you go for the customization level, I think definitely you need to have that Gen AI and AI model. Because the advantage of the Gen AI is that you can develop the data quality. You have the historical data in place now, and it can happen only through the Gen AI or AI. That what is the best use case you can bring it through those data which you are already holding it now. Now you have the historical data, you have the activities in the picture now. So out of that, what sort of activities, what sort of advice you want to give it to the MSME client? Say for example, MSME. So what advice you would like to give it to the MSME client? I think this all depends upon what strong you have that Gen AI and AI capability now. Now, Rob mentioned about the risk fraud prevention and the underwriting skill, which Mr. Mishra mentioned. I think these are the initiatives. It has to happen through the AI and the Gen AI model only, machine learning. I think that is the way we need to go forward and build the system now.
Absolutely. Nitin, closing thoughts
On Gen AI?
on Gen AI?
No, Gen AI, I think our view is that we are trying to bring in, we already use a lot of AI and ML in most of our businesses. We are now trying to bring in Gen AI on a logical basis, wherever it makes sense to bring in Gen AI. So we've identified something like 6-7 different areas where we do expect some, these are largely the low-hanging areas, but nonetheless, we've started work on that. But specific to trade finance, I think some of the use cases really need to be tested right now. We haven't come across too many of these tested use cases in trade finance, or for that matter, even in B2B. But the logical use cases for Gen AI again are going to be in terms of the summarization of documents, or to be able to generate insights on LCs, or let's say generate alerts in case of any out of pattern kind of transactions taking place, or reporting for that matter. So these are the generic ones which apply both on the B2B side as well as on the consumer side. So indifferent to either, we are going ahead and trying to test with most of them. But in the long run, our view is that we need to embed this. So when you have to embed this in the workflows itself, that needs a different kind of a re-engineering of our data models itself. So that is what we have now started to look at very carefully, that whether the data structures and the data architecture that we have is likely to support Gen AI, let's say 3 years down the line or not. Or even the present version of Gen AI that we have, is it likely to be able to operate on our existing data structures or not, or you create a separate data instance. So these two will go hand in hand. Maybe Gen AI will force us to relook at our data strategy itself, but nonetheless, I think we are well on track to at least test it and learn a few things till we do some large scale deployments.
Perfect.
And one interesting, I think, use case I will share with you. I think my bank is doing it. I think most of the banks also, they would have started now. See, we have crores of current account where the transactions are happening. So through that AI ML model, what we have done that we are analyzing that entire transactions in that account, and we are giving the pre-approved credit facility to the current account holders now. So manually it is impossible to track and give that facility to any current account holders now. So it has to happen through your AI ML model only. So, and this we have started, and we are seeing the lot of tractions happening through this model now. So this is very, very interesting, these use cases there for the business community when we are talking about that.
Fantastic. So I think just on to summarize here on AI ML itself, a lot of use cases within payments, especially around fraud, around detecting prospects, pre-approving cases. Generative AI, much more foundational at this stage, at least in trade finance and B2B. No tested use cases yet.
Yeah.
So it will go in the whole prioritization queue, and much more re-engineering will be required. Perfect. On that note, I think we are done. Thanks a lot to our members here. Great discussion. We are open for questions if any. More questions?
Hi, thanks a lot. So, just on this journey from physical to digital, one of the underlying assumptions is that through the digital channel, we are able to establish the veracity of the documents which lead to processing of transactions. What is the panel's view on the ecosystem and the ability of these platforms to establish this veracity, either through whatever triangulation or whatever? And what are you thinking about in terms of going forward mitigation, not only from an ecosystem perspective, but also from a legal structure perspective? Any thoughts on that?
Anyone wants to offer?
Yeah, if I can take your question. See, from the point of view of digitization and the physical submission of the document which you are talking about. Now today, I will just give you some examples. Today, somebody is in the current account holder or the business community submits any document related with his GST payments or the income tax payment or his account statement. Now, physically, it becomes very, very difficult to verify from the respective authority that what is the genuinity of those documents now. If you are able to track those things through the digital mode, and within 5 minutes, you can track the veracity of all those documents which the applicant or the borrower would have submitted to the organization now. There are fintech companies which we have onboarded. You just give those entire things, and they will verify each and everything from their respective organization's side, and they will give you the input now, what needs to be done now. So that is the strength of a digital piece if you are able to bring it in your business aspect now. One is the speed, second is the veracity, that accuracy of those documents. And for bankers, I think these are the things which is required, whether the document submitted by the applicant is genuine or not. And if the lakhs of transactions are happening and the physical submissions are happening, I think it becomes very, very difficult for the bankers to verify those documents.
Just to add to that, even the digital documentation is happening nowadays. So instead of having a physical document stamped and all that, we are moving to a digital documentation that will help this. So, and there is a legal framework for that. So that also is there in the ecosystem available, and that can be taken benefit of that, the entire thing.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
May I request all dignitaries on the dais for a group photograph, please?